Howson, the Liberal Democratic candidate.
Not quite sure how my middle name keeps appearing everywhere. I obviously filled in a form wrongly. I thought that since a significant number of you here this afternoon would be councillors at different levels, I would start off by reflecting something to how the new Police and Crime Commissioner are going to relate to the work that councils do in relation to policing and crime. And I put them under 6 single-word headings: doing, planning, linking, regretting and wondering. And in the doing, which is the longest list, depending on what level you are in terms of the councils, there are clearly work with the youth offending teams and indeed the other important work with young people, which helps to prevent the next generation of criminals joining the system, because the more we can divert young people away from the life of crime, the better it's going to be for us all. And secondly, there are work that councils do, particularly tackling certain sorts of crime as part of their functions. And I think of trading standards and the work that trading standards do, particularly on those crimes where people prey on the elderly. Those people who turn up with their vans and tell the pensioner that their roof needs replacing or that their drive needs tarmacking, and then take large amounts of money out of them. And I know that trading standards across the Thames Valley have done very useful work in trying to prevent that. And then obviously there is all the environmental crime, of which probably fly tipping is probably the most well-known example, and one of those areas where I suspect there is a great deal of agreement with CCTV strategically placed on those lay-bys where people drive in, dump things out of the back of the van and drive off, can be useful at keeping our roads and highways clean. Environmental health is another. Licensing, clearly, for district councils and unitaries. The new late night levy which has just come in. The whole issue, I think, which is going to come up in the next couple of years on personal licence holders. And then the work that's been done on engineering out crime. The issue of how you strategically put lighting, and probably not something that's particularly important in this area, but the issue of the use of alley gates in the Coronation Street type parts of the country. So that's, in a sense, some of the examples of doing, which the Police and Crime Commission will have to be aware of. And then the planning function in relation to safer partnerships, NAGs, and road traffic advisory committees, and those sorts of groups that we can all work together on to plan for the community and its response and its prevention of crime. Linking, the most obvious, is the work in which we're all going to do, and the Police and Crime Commissioner, as the government has made the job bigger, will have to do in relation to the third sector, and particularly the allocation of resources to the third sector to ensure that resource allocation is effective and not wasted. In terms of regretting, there's 2 examples. Obviously, we can regret the way in which probation has been taken away from its local focus and made a national body as part of NOMS, which I think is a serious mistake in some cases. And secondly, I would say this probably wouldn't I, after 22 years as a magistrate, I regret the removal of the magistrates' courts from our local towns and villages. I think it's much more important to move them back there than centralising them, otherwise we might end up with one for the whole of Buckinghamshire in either Milton Keynes or Aylesbury if crime continues to fall. And then finally, on my wondering list, there was what is the future for community justice panels, one of the initiatives which the government is clearly thinking about. How are children's services going to work with the new education structure around academies? Because we know, if I started by saying youth offending teams and youth work is incredibly important, those children who get excluded from school are most likely to be the children who will end up starting on a life of crime. And I see people who are school governors and sit on panels nodding about that. We have to make sure that the governance of education takes that into account, and whoever runs the school I'm not bothered about, but I am bothered if they don't see themselves as part of the community. So in my remaining time, let me just say to you that my pledges are around a couple of key issues. Obviously, you will have gathered from what I've said already, working to reduce youth crime and working to prevent new young entrants into the system, absolutely critical, top priority. Second priority for Thames Valley, improve detection rates. We have very poor detection rates compared to many other forces in this country, and that frankly is not good enough. Thirdly, to support the victims of crime and to ensure that the whole process is, wherever possible, speeded up. It is taking far too long for too much of our crime which is solved to get to court, and that is unfair on the victims. And then, clearly, a significant part of the Commission's job is going to be listening to communities, and I have 30 seconds left. And that means all sorts of communities, including the elected bodies and others. So let me, in my final closing remarks, say, if you elect me, then the test will be, in 3.5 years' time, have I reduced the fear of crime in the Thames Valley? Have I improved the detection of crime in the Thames Valley? And are there fewer new criminals entering on a life